So whenever.
Hello, I'm Joel Baird, the General Manager of Missoula Community Access Television, inviting you to our ongoing segments on the City Council races. In the studio with me right now is Paul Bohan. He is a candidate for Ward 3. Paul, thanks so much for coming over.
You bet.
I know you've got a lot to say, and I'm not going to waste any time. I'm asking the same questions of everyone, but I just wanted them to be a platform in which people could just say what was on their mind. So with that in mind, here's your first question. What inspired you to run for the office?
Well, I first thought about running 2 years ago, and I did run 2 years ago, and it was out of frustration as to how the zoning was being handled at Title 19 to Title 20. And you know, people who have watched me at city council meetings over the last 2 years, I've tried to kind of paint the picture, and it comes off as being negative all the time. But I think there's a lot of things that are positive about Missoula. But I think the processes of our city government have gone haywire. And I got tired of almost an animal farm twisting of city charter rules and the laws at the expense of the residents for the desires of people connected to the federal, state, city government coffers, and people who gain access through a system that has been and is openly open to manipulation by you know, I sometimes say bigger bullies, you could say bigger names and deep pocketbooks, and people who are, I call them the connected elites. And I think the residents have been lost out, and I don't think that they realize how much they are losing out through our government. And it's like right now it's government of the federal dollars, for the federal dollars, and by the federal dollars. And so many people are tied to those dollars. Our city can't even go, hey, here's what we need, how can we do it? It's like, well, here's federal dollars for something, let's see how we can use it. And I think that our system of democracy as a city is almost gone. And you know, we have property taxes in the forms of road and park districts, and we call them fees to avoid the limits and procedures on increases that were expressly made by the state as well as the city charter. We called the brand new stadium, the Osprey Stadium, back in 2007. We called it blighted to acquire $10 million or so additional dollars in tax increment monies for a stadium that the deal pretty much went south as soon as it started in the early 90s, and we just kept throwing money at it, and the residents were kind of, you know, kept in the dark. It's lying by omission in my mind, how much money was being spent, who was getting the money, and the conflicts of interest of people who are getting monies through tax increment monies or bonds that are also connected in other ways to people in government and actually offices of the government. Specifically, whether it's right now we have a person who's the owner of the Osprey, who's on the Missoula Parking Commission. And I think that's a huge conflict of interest for somebody who has a lease that's for 25 years, which is the essential life of the stadium. And the city can, you know, I've said this 2 years ago, city can only use the stadium 4 days a year, 2 during the baseball season and 2 at other times. And we got screwed, out and out screwed, and we're still getting screwed. And this person that did it is on the Missoula Parking Commission after he was on the Missoula Downtown Association and set up a new taxing district that coerces people downtown, even if a majority of them approved it. You know, it's still a tax, rather than having the Missoula Chamber or Missoula Downtown Association, where a collection of volunteer participants can decide what happens. You put a tax, and then he got to decide how that money was spent. He also set up the tourism bed tax, which isn't a bad thing, but he was also put in a position to determine how those funds were spent. And I just think, you know, I think the citizens of Missoula should be extremely well informed if that's the case. And I think that our city attorney and our city council has forgotten what ethics are, and it's not out of malice. I think it's just because they're so used to doing things this way in this city that they can't even see the ethical problems of what they're doing. Homeward is another group that's had a huge influence on the city to develop housing projects, and the MRA has funneled money to them. It's like, you know, the MRA throws them a couple $100,000, and then Homeward says, well, we set up a $17 million housing project. And it's like, well, if it's such a big project and so good, why does the city have to pay any money to them at all? The MRA just recently spent $500,000 or $600,000 to tear down the old Kmart, so that Cabela's and Kohl's and I forget what the other corporation that's planning to build there. And everyone says, well, it's going to be good for the city in the long run. Well, it's also going to be good for Cabela's, which, you know, I drove back to Minneapolis for a surgery this last summer. And I don't know how many Cabela's I'm crossing, whether it's in Billings or Bismarck or other cities. And it's like Cabela's is like all over. And it's like, I thought we wanted to keep Missoula unique. Why are we making it like every place else and using MRA dollars, which are called tax increment funds, which are essentially city funds and city resident funds that could be used for city resident purposes, and giving it to corporations that are building these huge so-called subsidized housing projects, low-income projects, and the contracts on some of them only require them to be low-income for 15 years. And anyone who's lived here in Missoula knows if you build something here that people can live in, they're going to move here, regardless of whether they can afford it or not. And right now we don't have the jobs, we don't have the resources to support a population that can't support itself, and more importantly, we can't even take care of the poor and the homeless that are here now, but making building projects that are going to, in the end, attract more people like that. But if you look at the committee of the whole meeting last October 22nd, the whole plan is to raise property tax values throughout the city, especially in the downtown area and other areas, and eventually those people are going to get priced out, and we're going to have a servant class to a rich class that's going to be worse than anything they're even contemplating right now. Because service centers, you're going to serve tourists and you're going to serve rich people, and you're going to warehouse the poor. And it's like, to me, it's like you're putting the poor into a prison, condemning them to a service industry job where there's not a whole lot of future, and you're doing it with taxpayer money. They make a decision to live here in Missoula because, oh, it's so beautiful, and then they find out they can't earn a living here, and then they don't have the resources to move somewhere else where they might be better off. I went through the same process. I didn't buy my home until about 10 years ago, and I was 44 years old. I lived in people's basements. I lived in apartments. I worked in the school districts, and finally, I through fortunate circumstances for me, saving money and going through that process of being responsible and working hard and knowing what resources I had, what I could use, I was able to buy a house. The direction Missoula is going now and the tax rates that are going up, it's possible I may not be able to stay here. And I have a good educational background. I do a lot of, I've worked hard in a lot of nonprofits and situations where I'm helping kids, helping families, helping developmentally disabled. And I was able to do that because I did have the resources to do it, but I'm also responsible for making sure that I have those, and if I don't have them, I'm going to have to make some choices and some changes. And what we're doing now is we're building these subsidized housing. People come here, they say, well, here I have a home over my head, I can get food for a while, and then all of a sudden they realize, well, okay, I'm 25 years old, there's nothing really here now, what am I going to do? And if you're like me, the way things are going, I may have to leave Missoula and find a better opportunity. I'm 56 years old, that's not going to be an easy thing.
Paul, I want to maybe ask you another one of the questions, just because that was a long response, but I mean, you're getting out a lot of what's on your mind. So specifically for the ward that you want to represent, Ward 3, what do you like about it, and what would you want to improve in Ward 3?
Well, there's so much that's good about Ward 3, and most people think of Ward 3 as being the university district, but it's a much larger and much more diverse ward in terms of wealth, in terms of poverty, in terms of housing, the types of property that are within the ward, and the types and the various businesses that then people realize. It's like you have the river area along Russell, the McCormick Park, the Willard area, the stadium, you know, the 3rd Street hip strip, businesses and homes along Brooks as well as north of the post office, the Slant Street areas, you know, St. Joe's schools, Paxson schools, Hellgate High School, Loyola High School. You have parks, you have Bonner Park, there's lots of other small parks tucked in different places. You have a Flipper's Grill, Jeanette Rankin Peace Center and other nonprofits are in there, Big Dipper Ice Cream. There's apartment buildings, condos, there's all sorts of nonprofits, there's many small specialty stores, thrift shops, there's auto repair shops, bakeries, there's restaurants, there's craft brewers. And I'm reading this just to try not to forget anybody here, but you know, the area is bordered on the north by the Clark Fork River. It includes the Kim Williams Trail and the old Milwaukee Train Depot. And south, if you kind of run along Kenton, Beverly, there's a kind of a jog along the boundary. And I think that the jog was put in for estimated population of the area. And it also includes the so-called blighted stadium that they put in 2007 that I mentioned before.
Yeah. That's in your ward. Well, and if you were to say what you liked about the ward.
Oh, I like the parks. I like the diversity. I like the fact that you can walk to pretty much anything you need. You got Food Farm over on Orange Street there for groceries, and there's all sorts of other little shops that you can go to. And it's really, you know, for most of the people there, it's within walking distance and biking distance from downtown and the university. And I love it there, and I've lived in different areas. I lived on Rollins for a while. I lived on Tremont for a while, and I also lived in the University District when I was working at a group home for developmentally disabled adults.
Okay, here's your question 3. If you were elected to the seat on City Council for Ward 3, what do you think you would like most about the job?
Being able to actually help people and listen to people and have people's wants and desires get reflected to the city council in a more direct way than they are now.
Okay. And what do you have to imagine, what would you like least about the job?
People who pick one issue without looking at the whole of the situation. You know, whether it's people that say, well, we need to have marijuana in here, or we need to have more bars, or we have to have all, you know, non-polluting vehicles right now, and not looking at the expense or the cost or the actual benefits that you might have. So it's like you can get up and work up and talk about climate change and global warming and say we need to do this one thing, we need to do this other thing. And there are so many little steps that you can take and do them as they come up and as you can do them, that will get you further than confronting the whole town and saying you have to do this or you're really bad, or you have to do this so that we're good. Life doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way for individual humans. It doesn't work that way for cities. And there are things that we need to concentrate on as a city government, and right now that's the people of the city.
Okay. What have you learned about Missoula while you're out campaigning for the office?
I've learned that there's a lot of people have given up on having any influence on the government, and then on the other side, I get people that seem to get so wrapped up in it and actually have been groomed to get so wrapped up in it that all they think, oh, it's about power, it's about forcing people to do something, it's about saying we're right, you're wrong, and it's none of those things. Government is about people. It's about meeting everybody's needs as best as possible and providing the most opportunities for everybody. And everybody's different as to what their needs and desires and wants are. And government's role is to respond to that huge diversity and figure out a way to provide absolutely the widest variety of opportunities for those people. And right now I feel like the city's got this, whether it's smart streets or the, I forget what the UN program is called. But
The climate change one?
no, well, no, it's not the climate change. There was a protest about Agenda 21, I think is what some people call it.
Yeah, for the climate change, the
is,
greenhouse gas
yeah,
reduction
and it's like,
committee.
it sounds good on paper, but when you make an agenda out of it and you ignore what you already have, and you just say, we're going to take this roadmap, whether it's Agenda 21 or it's our old planner, Roger Millar, or some of the people on the council, or is you're going to take this roadmap and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to lift everything from this roadmap and I'm going to put it on Missoula, regardless of whether it fits or not. And that's what's happening to Missoula right now. And that's part of the reason they're pushing Mountain Line. This levy is basically the federal government saying, let's see, if you charge $38 to every homeowner every year, which is $380 every 10 years, including those other property owners that it gets divided up by, then we'll match that fund. So the federal government is saying, here, we'll give you this money if you take it from your residents. And there's a lot of that going on. And I think what should happen as far as Mountain Line goes, it's like, let's take the city, look at what we have, don't duplicate Mountain Line and ASUM transportation, figure out a way to do it efficiently, cheaply, and not waste money on huge buses that are running with 1, 2, 3, 4, or most of the time, especially in the summer, empty, burning gas and fuel at 8 miles maximum per gallon, and kicking up particulates, which is a big problem in Missoula. And it's like, I like public transportation, but make the public transportation match the people that are using it. And we're not doing that. And we're also not telling Missoula residents how much is already being spent. And it's like, no matter how many millions you're spending the way you're headed now, the bus system's never going to do what you say it's going to do. And if people want to look at what we're spending, just go to the National Transit Database and type in just type in 8009, and you can type in Mountain Line or Missoula Urban Transportation District. If you're familiar with the web, you can get to it. It's not easy to get to. You have to kind of go through. But if you have the ID number of Mountain Line, which is 8009, and type in National Transit Database, you can get to the actual cost. But in some situations, the actual operating expenses are about, these are rough guesses, and if you include capital expenses, it would be a lot more. But it's like $4 per passenger per mile right now for the regular bus service, and it's about around $7 per passenger per mile for the on-demand service, which is a good service. It's just being inefficiently run, and it's like everybody says, well, let's spend more money. And so basically, someone who's riding the bus from the university to community hospital, say it's 5 miles, it's costing taxpayers and all the people putting money in the Mountain Line about $20 per person.
I'm going to turn your attention to the closing thought part of the question, because I know we have 20 minutes, and this would give you about 3 to 4 minutes for your closing thoughts, like what you would want people to know about you, your campaign, anything leading up to them making that decision through the mail-in ballot coming up.
All I can tell you is that I want to be a worker, and I'm always a worker, and I'm a listener, and my mind can be changed. When I speak, I do speak passionately, and I wait for people to tell me, it's like, you're off your rocker, but I also wait for people to tell me why I'm off the rocker. And I think every Missoulian should have that sort of attitude. You have your positions, but you need to listen to people and you need to respond to people. And so if all the things I've said at the council meeting, it's like, well, you're wrong, tell me why. Tell me why millions of dollars should go to one person's or a group of individuals' dreams instead of spending it on the city as a whole. To me, it's no fun it's no fun telling people what they have and are doing for so long. That borders, I don't like to say corruption because nobody's evil here. There's nobody that has malice in what they're doing. But they've been doing it in a way for years that I just don't, I think they need to step outside and look at who's benefiting versus what ordinary residents are gaining. I want to be the conscience and an instigator of actual solutions. You're not saying, oh, here's millions of dollars that the federal government will spend for this. Here, look at the problem I just solved. When all you've done is said, here, I'll take this bucket of money and I'll put it over here. Somebody else will fix it and I'll take credit for it. I'm a worker. If there's money that can be raised in other ways than for something that the city needs, I'll be working to do it. If there are federal dollars that are available that don't fit Missoula's needs, I'll find ways to, I'll learn to find ways. It's not going to be instant. There's going to be a learning curve for me, but I'm a hard worker, and I'll say that over and over again. Anyone who knows anything I've done, I've surpassed everyone's expectations about what I can do. I'm not a talker. I'm a lousy talker, and I'll never be a politician. I'll tell you what I think, but you tell me I'm wrong, and you tell me why I'm wrong, and I'll listen. And I'll tell you, if I disagree with you, I'll tell you why. But you need to have a conversation. Most people that come up and say, well, I've talked to them, they tell me I've said it wrong. And unfortunately, that's part of the way my brain operates, is sometimes I can come across as obstinate, I can come across as somewhat arrogant, and I'm not. But my thought processes and the way things come out, that it comes out that way, and I've suffered a lot because of that, but I've also persevered a lot to overcome it. And people who know me, if they take the time to know me, know what kind of person I am, and that's the kind of person I want residents to find out about. And I'm hoping that they will elect me, and I'm hoping they understand that a lot of the candidates are connected to these same groups that are getting federal money, and I think that's, it's not, legally wrong, but is it ethical for people who are counting on federal money through the city government to be running for the city council? There's already people on the city council that do that, or have friends that get city funds, and then, they may excuse themselves from voting, but is that a reason to be on the council?
Okay, I think we're just about out of time. Paul, I want to thank you for taking the time. It looks like you spent a lot of time preparing for the questions, too.
Well, yeah, I did. Actually, these were just yesterday,
Wow.
But I've spent a lot of time on this campaign. You can also go to a Facebook web page. It's called Paul Bohan Thoughts on Missoula City Government. And if you type my name or any part of that, you should be able to get to it. And it has all sorts of writings from the last 2 years. And like I say, I've been painting a picture for 2 years as to what's going on in city government and what I'm about. And I'm hoping people will look at it. And if they look at it and read it and that's what they want, vote for me. If that's not what you want, I understand.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching this installment of What's Up Missoula. If you know of a group and you want to see them on the show, give us a call at MCAT. The number is 542-6228. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. Thanks for watching.